Okay, so chapter 8 is about middle adulthood. So there are some physical changes that happen to the body during middle adulthood because this is when the aging process typically begins. There are some reactions to changes that depend on a person's self concept. During this period of time, there could be a double standard for men and women, with older women viewing themselves in more unflattering terms, and older men being seen as attractively mature. Height, weight, and strength are kind of the benchmarks that we look for when thinking about how the body changes. After 55, the bones become less dense. Men lose about 1 inch, while women lose 2 inches. Women can also develop osteoporosis with brittle bones, fragile and thin bones, and they need a diet that's high in calcium and exercise to reduce the risk of osteoporosis. Men and women tend to gain weight during this time. The amount of their body fat increases, and that can be stopped by exercise and weight control. Their strength gradually decreases, particularly in the back and leg muscles, and by age 60, people lose about 10% of their strength. As far as the senses go, the sights and sounds of the middle age can also be an issue, with visual acuity declining. The eye lenses can change shape and lose elasticity. There could be issues with depth perception and distance perception and night vision. Glaucoma, which is increased pressure in the eye, can also occur, with 1 to 2% of those who are over 40 are affected by glaucoma. African Americans are particularly at risk, and it can be treated if found early, and if untreated, it can cause blindness. Hearing issues also occur during this time period, with some loss that's due to environmental factors such as loud noises. Aging can also cause the loss of hair cells in the inner ear, and we know those hair cells don't grow back once they're gone. The eardrum can become less elastic with age. There can also be a loss of frequency sounds, and men are more prone to hearing loss than women are. Reaction time is also affected in middle adulthood due to the gradual loss of muscles in the body and their nerve system processing. People can compensate for those reaction time losses by practicing and being more careful, and exercise can slow those losses. The frequency of intercourse will decrease, but sexual activities are still vital during this age group. About half of men and women ages 45 to 59 report having sexual intercourse once a week or more. Half of men ages 50 to 59 and a third of women of the same age have received oral sex in the last year. Sex remains important for gay and lesbian couples through middle childhood as well. Children during during middle adulthood, there's more sexual enjoyment and freedom because children are grown and away from the house. Menopause allows women to stop practicing birth control. And there can be some challenges that also occur for men and women. Around age 45, women enter a female climacteric period, which lasts from 15 to 20 years, and it marks the end of the childbearing years. Menopause may also occur, which may begin as early as 40 and as late as 60. That's when the production of estrogen and progesterone drop, and other symptoms can occur like hot flashes, and half of women have no symptoms at all. Perimenopause occurs 10 years before menopause and results in hormone loss. After a year without menstruation, menopause is said to have occurred. There are some benefits of hormone therapy. It may decrease coronary heart disease, osteoporosis, stroke, and colon cancer. It can also improve memory, cognitive performance, and a person's sex drive. And there's also some risks to hormone therapy, and those include breast cancer, blood clots, pulmonary embolism, and heart disease. There can also be some psychological consequences that happen as a result of menopause. About 10% of women have psychological problems such as depression, anxiety, crying spells, lack of concentration, and irritability. It's believed that women's expectations about menopause relate to their experience of it. And during the male climacteric period, this is a period of physical and psychological change that relates to the male reproductive system in middle adulthood. Those changes are gradual, hard to attribute psychological symptoms to subtle physiological changes. By age 40, 10% of men have enlarged prostates. By age 80, half of all men do. There could be some problems with urination. There could also be erectile dysfunction that occurs when men are unable to achieve or maintain an erection. And here are some review items for this section. And let's do a question. A decline in the ability to hear high pitched, high frequency sounds is known as what? And hopefully you chose B as correct answer. Here's another question. The period of time that marks a woman's transition from being able to bear children to not being able to do so is known as what? And hopefully you chose B as well. Now let's talk about some health changes that occur during middle adulthood. Health concerns are important in middle adulthood because many people fear getting cancer. Most have no chronic health difficulties, um, and some will suffer from chronic conditions. Arthritis typically begins after 40. Diabetes can occur between 50 and 60. Being overweight makes a person at higher risk. Hypertension can also occur, and the death rate for people 40 to 60 has declined drastically over the last 50 years. So if we look at figure 8-3, you can see some of the worries of adulthood: money, work, family responsibilities, and health concerns. And you can see at the top of that list is money. Stress continues to have significant impact on a person's health. The three main consequences of stress are direct physiological effects, such as increased blood pressure and hormonal activity, unhealthy behaviors, such as smoking, lack of sleep, drinking, and drugs, and people are less likely to seek good medical care if they're stressed. Figure 8-5 shows the consequences of stress written out, so you can see those three factors. There are also some social and environmental factors that can be related to health, with African Americans in the United States being twice as likely to die than Caucasians. Having a low SES makes you more likely to experience a disabling illness. They also tend to work in more dangerous occupations and have inferior health care coverage if they're low income. Crime rates and pollutants are also higher in neighborhoods with low socioeconomic status, and death rates tend to be linked with people who live in impoverished areas. When we think about gender, women experience more minor, short term illnesses. They smoke less, drink less, and have less dangerous jobs. And men tend to experience more serious illnesses um, than women do. When it comes to heart disease, more men die in middle adulthood of heart and circulatory problems than any other cause. There are both genetic and environmental issues involved. Genetics has to do with heart disease that runs in families, and men are more likely to suffer than women, and that suffering tends to increase with age. Environmental factors, such as cigarette smoking, having a high fat diet, and a diet that's high in cholesterol, and having a lack of physical exercise. Psychological factors can also relate to heart disease. Having a type A personality, where you're easily angered and hostile, versus a type B personality, where you go with the flow and are very easygoing. And then the type D behavior is distressed, and they believe insecurity, anxiety, and a negative outlook put people at risk. Cancer can also become a threat because it's the leading cause of death in middle age. There are many forms that respond to treatment. About 40% still are alive 5 years after they've been diagnosed with cancer. The treatment of cancer can take a variety of forms, such as radiation, chemotherapy, and surgery. Early diagnosis is crucial. Women should do self breast exams, and men should do testicle self exams. A mammogram, a, a mammogram or mammography is used to detect breast cancer, and it's hard to determine when to start them. False positive and false negatives are problematic, and women should do their own research and make informed decisions. Here's a little bit of a review of information regarding health. And let's go to a question. Which of the following is a direct physiological consequence of stress in middle adulthood? And the correct answer is going to be D, decreased immune system response. And here's another question. Insecurity, extreme ambition, anxiety, and hostility put people at risk for heart attacks. This behavior is referred to as the blank behavioral problem. And hopefully you said A, type A. Now let's talk about intelligence and memory during middle adulthood. There's been a lot of cross-sectional studies that show that older subjects are less likely to score well than younger subjects on traditional IQ tests. These studies may have suffered from cohort effects, or with older subjects being less educated, having less stimulating jobs, and having poorer health. Cross-sectional studies may also underestimate the intelligence in older subjects. So it's difficult for us to answer a lot of information about how intelligence declines with adulthood, because those longitudinal studies may be showing practice effects, which says that people may become more comfortable with testing over time. Subjects may have also left or died during the study, and those who remain are healthier, more stable, and more psychologically positive. And longitudinal studies may overestimate the intelligence of older individuals. When we think about crystallized and fluid intelligence, tester time and reaction time tends to slow with age, and the results may be due to physical changes and not cognitive changes. A fluid test is going to include inductive reasoning, spatial orientation, perceptual speed, and verbal memory, and those things decline with age. Whereas crystallized intelligence includes numerical and verbal abilities, and those tend to hold steady or increase with age. Many researchers believe that we should be looking at other abilities when we look at the intelligence of older people. Inductive reasoning, spatial orientation, perceptual speed, and verbal memory begin to decline at 25 years of age. Numeric ability increases until about 40 and then lowers and remains steady after 60. Verbal abilities tend to rise until 40 and remain steady. Reasons for changes in brain functioning in middle adulthood. 20 genes are vital to learning, memory, and mental functioning, and those begin to function less efficiently in middle adulthood. And as people age, there are specific areas of the brain that are used to accomplish particular tasks can change. Older adults use both hemispheres, while younger people tend to use only one hemisphere of their brain for processing. And researchers have proposed 4 reasons for why people continue to remain competent in middle adulthood. Traditional tests may not tap into practical intelligence. Highly successful middle-aged people may not be representative of all middle-aged people. Professional success may not rely on cognitive ability. And older people demonstrate selective optimization, which are learned skills to compensate for the ones that they've lost. We also have to be able to separate experts from novices. Expertise develops with attention and practice. Experts rely on experience and intuition. Their behavior is often automatic. And experts develop better problem solving strategies than non experts do. Research also shows us that most people have minimum or no memory loss. There are different types of memory, such as sensory memory, and that is our memory for things that are invoked by our five senses. There's no decline in these senses in sensory memories in middle age. And then our short term memories only hold information for 15 to 25 seconds. And there's also no decline in short term memory in middle age. When it comes to long term memory, it holds information that is rehearsed for a relatively permanent amount of time. Some people have this decline in middle age. Their storage is less efficient, and their memory retrieval can get worse. Memory schemas are organized bodies of information that exist in our memory. Schemas help us organize, characterize, and interpret new information based on our own experiences. People who hold schemas for individuals and categories of people and behaviors and events, and schemas can convey cultural information. Mnemonics are strategies to organize material to make it easier to remember. Can help you get organized, pay attention, using coding, help you visualize and rehearse information. Here is some information for you to review. And we'll go ahead and go to a question. According to blank, studies that test people of different ages at the same time, older subjects scored lower than younger subjects on traditional tests. What kind of tests were these? And hopefully you said C, cross-sectional. Here's another question. Over the years, one of the types of intelligence that increases with age is blank intelligence, or the accumulation of information, skills, and strategies that people have learned through experience. And that would be, of course, your crystallized intelligence. Here's another question. Middle-aged individuals find it hard to pay attention to everything that's going on around them and often rely on blank or mental shortcuts to reduce the stress of remembering so many things. And hopefully you said A, schemas. Here's another question. Blank are formal strategies for organizing material in ways that make it more likely to be remembered. And hopefully here you said A, mnemonics. Now let's talk about personality development. So we've got Erik Erikson's model, which is a SAGE model, and critics argue that these normative crisis models are outdated, and they came from a time when gender roles were more rigid. People can experience life events, and this model says that if a woman had her first baby at age 21, she would experience the same psychological forces as a woman having her first child at 39. Proponents of both models argue that adulthood is a time of growth. During Erikson's stage, he says that this is a time of generativity versus stagnation. This is when people consider their contributions to family, community, work, and society. Generativity means guiding future generations, leaving a lasting contribution, looking beyond oneself to the continuation of one's life through others. And stagnation means people focus on the trivialness of life and feel they have made minimal contributions. So there were a few other researchers who built on Erikson's views, such as Valiant, who said that we should keep the meaning versus rigidity. And he said that this occurs between 45 and 55, where adults seek meaning by accepting strengths and weaknesses of others, and rigid adults become isolated from others. Gould said that adults pass through 7 stages that are associated with specific time periods in life. He said that people in their 30s and 40s feel an urgency to attain their goals, and there's little research to support his descriptions. Here are Gould's transformations into adult development, and those 7 stages he said are present. Daniel Levinson said that there's a seasons of life theory. He interviewed men and concluded that the early 40s is a period of transition and crisis. He also suggested that adult men pass through stages from 20 to midlife. Around 40 and 50 and 45, he said the focus is on finite, the nature of life. They question assumptions. They experience the first signs of aging. They doubt the value of their accomplishments and realize they can't accomplish everything. According to Levinson, the assessment of life can lead to a midlife crisis, which is a stage of uncertainty and indecision. They may find their accomplishments not that satisfying and may seek to define what went wrong. Critics of this theory point out that he used a very limited sample and that he overstated the consistency and the generality of the patterns he found in his research. So, a big source of debate in psychology is whether or not a midlife crisis is actually real. Despite widespread acceptance of the concept of a midlife crisis, evidence does not suggest that one actually exists. For most people, their transition into middle life is smooth and rewarding. They find that their career has blossomed. They seek to maximize their involvement with family, friends, and other social groups. Those who feel young show improved mortality rates, and those who regret it, the course of their life, they tend to make some changes. And we pay attention to the few who exhibit a midlife crisis. It's really that people get to the middle of their life and they realize, you know what, I haven't accomplished the things I want to accomplish. I've worked hard and I wanted this car. I'm going to go buy it for myself. So middle age is a cultural construction. The significance of an age range differs widely. Members of some cultures in India define life by social responsibility, family management issues, and moral senses. Transitions in life that are marked when a woman moves from her father's home to living with her husband's family is of significance in their culture. Psychologists um, have had differing opinions on whether or not a person's personality changes or remains stable as they age. Erickson and Levinson suggest that that it changes substantially, and Costa and McCrae find remarkable stability in personality. The big five traits of personality, which usually can be described through the acronym OCEAN: neuroticism, extroversion, openness, agreeableness, and conscientiousness, says that personality is stable. Across the lifespan, adults have a sense of well being which remains stable. This suggests to us that most people have a set point for happiness. 30% of people in the United States are very happy. African Americans rate themselves as very happy at only slightly lower rates than whites do. Here are some review things to consider about personality development. And let's move along to a question. According to the blank model of personality development, individuals at different ages can experience the same emotional and personality changes because they have shared common occurrences in their life. And hopefully you said A for the correct answer. Now let's talk about relationships that occur in middle age. Research suggests that there's a U-shaped curve of marital satisfaction. Conflicting research suggests that marital satisfaction declines over time. Sexual satisfaction is related to marital satisfaction, with couples agreeing about their sex lives. There are a few coping mechanisms that help couples remain happily together, such as holding realistic expectations, focusing on the positive, compromising, and avoiding suffering in silence. Divorce also can occur among midlife couples, and that occurrence is rising. About one woman in 8 will get divorced after 40. Divorce can be hard for women over 40 who never worked, and many people end up happy redefining themselves after a divorce. So it begs the question of, why do some marriages unravel? It's because people become more individual and spend less time together. Many leave an unhappy marriage. Divorce is much more socially acceptable now than it was in the past. Wives feel less dependent on their husbands emotionally and economically. The feelings of passionate love tend to subside, and there's increased stress in households where both parents work, and of course, infidelity. When it comes to remarriage, 75 to 80% of divorced people remarry within 2 to 5 years of their divorce. It's harder for middle aged women to remarry, with 64% of men remarrying while only 52% of women remarry. The marriage gradient pushes men to marry younger women, and older women face harsh societal standards. Many remarry because of the stigma of divorce. There's usually some differences in a second marriage. Older couples are more mature and realistic. Their roles are more flexible. Couples look at marriage more cautiously, and the divorce rate is slightly higher for second marriages due to more stress in a blended family. And once divorced, it's easier to step away and walk away again. The empty nest syndrome can happen when children first leave the home and their parents are middle age. Some stay at home moms struggle with this. For working moms, it's more of a myth. There are benefits to children who leave home. The spouses have more time for one another, and there's more time from work. It's stressful when children return home after being gone. That's stressful in the relationship. Some parents respond by becoming helicopter parents, and they micromanage their children's college and work life. One third of employers commented that parents had submitted resumes for their children. One quarter of employers have been contacted by parents urging them to hire their children. 4% of employers noted parents have accompanied a child on an interview, and some parents help children complete their work assignments. There's also something called a boomerang children, and these are children who come back and refill the empty nest. They usually come home for economic reasons. Also, a difficult economy makes it hard to find jobs that pay enough. Others return home after a divorce. Close to one third of adults, 25 to 34, are living with their parents. Most pay rent, so finance is a benefit. And most report it does not change their relationship. The sandwich generation is what is thought to be between children and parents when they must fulfill needs of children and aging parents. These trends that create the sandwich generation is the fact that parents live longer and couples marry later and they have children later. So they become the sandwich generation because they are raising children and also helping out their parents. This makes role reversal difficult because parents may need money or need a place to live, and most of the burden will fall on the wife. This can be rewarding for the children and the parents. Multi generational families can renegotiate these roles, with the middle generation taking over. Some elderly will wrestle with the idea of the loss of independence and decision making authority. Cultural influence can also impact how caregivers see their roles. In a collectivist view, the traditional and ordinary duties are there, whereas in an individualistic view, parents being raised by their children can be seen as a burden. Middle adulthood may also mean becoming a grandparent. Involved grandparents actively engage and have influence over their grandchildren. Their companionate grandparents are relaxed and act as supporters and buddies, and remote grandparents are detached and distant. Grandmothers tend to be more involved than grandfathers, and African American grandparents are more involved than white grandparents. The spousal abuse epidemic in the United States is another issue that can affect families during middle adulthood. And this is a form of violence that happens in one fourth of marriages. More than half of murdered women are murdered by a partner. 21 to 34% of women will be slapped, kicked, beaten, choked, or threatened, or attacked with a weapon at least once by a partner. About 15% of marriages have continuing severe violence. Violence occurs across social strata, ethnic groups, and religions, and 1 in 7 men have been the victims of severe physical violence. There are a few factors that can increase the abuse that happens in a relationship, such as becoming from a low socioeconomic status, growing up in a violent home. Families with more children tend to have more violence. Single parent families tend to have more stress that can lead to violence. And incest is more likely to occur in affluent families. There are stages usually to spousal abuse. There's the tension building stage, there's the acute battery incident, and the loving contrition stage where the wife feels at fault and may explain why and that may explain why she stays. Some people believe there are no good alternatives to the loving contrition stage, and some people stay in the relationship out of fear. But it just becomes a cycle of violence. Abused and neglected children become abusive adults. Only 1/3 go on to abuse their children, but 2/3 of abusers were not abused as children. There are also some cultural roots we can consider when we think about family violence. Wife battering is common in cultures where women are seen as inferior to men. The original English law allowed for the battering of women. It wasn't removed into the 19th century. Women are targets when they are of low status and when they are of high status and seen as a threat. So there are a few things we can do to help victims. We can teach that violence is never acceptable. Call the police. Understand that the remorse shown by a spouse, no matter how heartfelt, may not impact future violence. The victim must seek a safe haven. If you feel in danger from an abusive partner, seek a restraining order and call the National Domestic Violence Hotline. So here are some review things for us to consider regarding family life in middle adulthood. And let's go on to a question. Couples who in middle adulthood need to take care of their aging parents and their children are often referred to by psychologists as the what generation? And that is the sandwich generation. C. The stage of marital aggression in which the batterer expresses remorse and apologizes for the violence is known as the what stage? And hopefully you said D, the loving contrition stage. The last thing we're going to discuss in chapter 8 is work and leisure life. During middle adulthood, this is the time of greatest productivity, success, and earning power at a job. Factors that make work satisfying tend to undergo transformation. Middle-aged workers care more about pay and working conditions and vacation. Job satisfaction does not always have to be universal in middle adulthood because burnout can also occur, where a person feels dissatisfied, disillusioned, frustrated, and weary. Ways that people can combat burnout is to adopt feasible goals, restructure their job to acknowledge victories, and disengage from work during leisure time. Unemployment can impact a person psychologically. It can leave them feeling anxious, depressed, and irritable. Middle-aged adults stay unemployed longer than younger workers do. Employers may discriminate on others because of age. Older workers are actually more reliable and hardworking, and unemployment can be shattering and lead to other issues in life, despondency. Some people can change jobs voluntarily in middle adulthood. Their old job gave them little satisfaction, and the worker may have mastered all of the old job's challenges, or he or she may be uncomfortable, so they seek out something new. Women tend to return to the job market after they've raised children in middle adulthood. Critics of immigration say today's immigrants are different. Only a third are white. 90% were white before. Critics also argue that immigrants lack skills. However, most are doing well financially. Only a few are on welfare. And immigrants contribute more to the economy than they take. Most people in middle adulthood have 28 hours of leisure time a week. They spend about 15 of those hours watching TV and about 5 hours socializing. Some participate in sports or town committees. Their life tends to be faster paced than in many other countries. And here are some things to review about work and leisure. And let's go ahead and do one more review question. Compared to younger adults, middle-aged adults who lose their jobs, A, B, C, or D. And hopefully you said A, tend to stay unemployed longer and have fewer opportunities for gratifying work as they age. And that's everything I wanted to share with you about Chapter 8, Middle Adulthood.